One day I closed my eyes while standing in front of my bathroom mirror. When I opened them, I saw a woman I didn't know, a hollow person with no sparkle, no life inside, an empty shell trying to protect its dead contents from those who might see the truth. I felt as though all I could see in the reflection was a whole lot of nothing and no one, an identity someone else had slowly carved out of what used to be me. In that moment, I started to understand that my life had to change. My name is Neile Jones, and I'm a domestic violence survivor. Everything in the beginning was great. It was like it is when you date someone. He was really charming, very sweet. I mean, he was, you know, what you would consider from the outside looking in a good boyfriend. And it stayed that way for a long time.
It never entered my mind there was a problem there. Never entered my mind because I trusted her judgment.
At different point, I mean, when they were first dating, I would say I didn't notice much of a change at all.
But when it flipped, it was a big flip. And it started out with, you know, little things like a fist right by my head into the wall. Well, he didn't hit me. If his football team lost, it was my fault. It was a brutal night. People think that the first time something bad happens to you, you should be able to just walk away. But it was so gradual that in my mind it was kind of, did that really just happen to me? Did that really just happen?
She felt she had to make it work, that she had done something wrong and she needed to fix it, and she didn't share with Sam or I. We had no idea.
And then there was a fight where it became very apparent that if I stayed, I don't know if I would be here. And he started approaching me like this, and I knew if those hands got around my neck, if I passed out, that was going to be the end of it. So I just kept thinking, okay, get in the other room, get in the other room, get in the other room. And then the language that was being said to me was, I don't care if you die. Nobody's going to care if you die. Nobody's going to notice. And it was, oh my God, okay, this is not going to get better. It was the beginning of the end. It was the beginning of, you know what, it's not worth it.
We got a phone call on Monday after we got home, and an inconsolable daughter being so apologetic and telling us a little of what had been going on and saying, this has gone so far, I cannot fix this. And can I come home?
When you watch your parents cry, because there's nothing they can do, it's hard because you're hurting them to get better. And that was the hardest part, watching my father cry.
The verbal abuse was one thing. The physical abuse was beyond comprehension.
We initially just came up with the plan to get her out of the situation.
You just want to hold her and comfort her, like when she was that little noisy little girl.
If something's hurting you, you've got to figure out, okay, how can I remove myself from that?
Get her back home and decide what we'll do. Circle the wagons, as Sam always says.
When you have truly feared for your life from someone that is at the same time telling you that they love you, it takes a while for that to heal. One of the things they told me to do was journal about what I was going through, and so the book is really almost more of my journal.
This exercise for her in revealing this, talking about this, us talking about this, it will take some of the stigma away from seeking help.
I believe in my heart that this book of Neile's will cause a lot of folks to be able to say, you know what, we're going to talk to somebody. There's help there.
What if that's happening to your next door neighbor and it just took a, hey, you know, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but if you need me, I'm here. To help that person regroup and be happy. I mean, the only way we're going to stop this thing is if we talk about it.
As we mentioned earlier in the show, the topic for today's interview is domestic abuse. And it occurs when one person in an intimate relationship, such as marriage, dating, or cohabitation, tries to dominate and control the other person in that relationship through physical or emotional abuse. It can happen to anyone, regardless of race, sex, financial class, or religious practice. But just as anyone can find themselves in one of these types of relationships, anyone can also get out of them as well. And joining us to discuss her new book, Look Again Because You Can, is local author and television news anchor Neile Jones-Batie. The book chronicles her experience with an abusive relationship and how she was able to take control of her life and change it for the better. Welcome to the show, Neile. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So as we mentioned, you actually took control of your life. You are a survivor. But there are some women out there who are not. How many women in the state of Arkansas suffer from domestic abuse or have been a victim of domestic violence?
The numbers change, but I was reading that more than a dozen women died from domestic abuse in Arkansas last year alone. And in calling the Washington County and Benton County Sheriff's Office and seeing how many calls they get, I think you'd be amazed. Some statistics will tell you it's once every 12 to 15 seconds.
Wow, staggering number. And how does this compare to other parts of the nation?
Arkansas could do better. We want to do better. In fact, there's a project in the works called the Clothesline Project, and the goal is to have the number of women killed from domestic abuse or as a result of that to 0 in 2010. We're not there yet, but we're going to continue to work toward that.
Sure. And domestic abuse is not just physical abuse, it's also emotional and mental anguish as well. Do you think that it's more prevalent during certain times of the year, for example, during the holidays, or if someone is undergoing financial stress, or maybe if at one point in their life they were abused?
Yes, and yes, there's many different things that factor into it, and everybody's situation is different. And although there's really no research to back up that domestic abuse is more prevalent during the holidays, most of the shelters will tell you they are more full and they are getting more calls during the holiday because the financial stress is more there, the family stress is more there. And in a normal, healthy relationship, the two biggest stresses are typically money and sex. So if you're having a hard time with either one of those anyway, it just continues to make that stress even more so.
What do you think is the best way to help prevent domestic abuse, or to look for signs to detect it, to help a loved one?
I think everybody's situation is different. The one consistent factor when you talk to the Arkansas Coalition Against Domestic Violence, or when you talk to our police or our advocates in any sort, is they say, don't be judgmental, which is so hard, because on average it takes a woman anywhere from 7 to 10 times of leaving before she leaves and it sticks. And I want to say this is happening to men too. We just hear about women more. And I think part of what's hard for women is they feel so judged, so they just kind of want to stay where they are.
Sure. Now, you've got a great book out that I just finished reading, Look Again Because You Can. And, you know, I read about the trauma and the sadness that you endured, and that must have been very difficult. You described it as an angry dance. And at one point, you actually feared for your life.
Yes. I mean, it became very clear that if I were to stay in that situation, it would not be conducive to me being alive. I mean, this person was becoming more and more angry with me for every mistake in his life that he had made, but it was easier to project that anger onto me.
Sure. And you mentioned in your book that you felt alone, but you were never really alone because you knew in your heart that God was with you.
I'm one of those people that I just have a really strong faith, and I believe that if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't be here today. You know, my family, they will say, oh, we didn't do anything, I wish we'd done more, but they did everything right by just being there and being supportive. And I think a lot of that has to do with our faith and, you know, praying every night, what do I do, how do I get out of this, and deciding to look in the mirror and realize the reality of the situation. Because that's the other thing. When you're in this relationship, you don't want to realize that you're in it, because then you have to admit, okay, I need to do something.
And you decided to do something and take control back of your life. And tell us about the steps that you took, Neile, to take control of your life again. You started praying. Well, obviously, you always prayed. You started keeping a journal. Is that right? What other things did you do?
You know, I talk about several different things in the book, and the plethora of things that I could list, and it will be different for everyone, but the journal was such a helpful tool. My mother is a counselor, and she often tells people to journal. And then the counselor I was seeing was saying, why don't you journal about this? Why don't you journal about this? It offers several different things. One, it's a great tool because, you know, you end up in that cycle, and there's the honeymoon phase where you're getting the flowers and everything's perfect, and you so want to believe that that's it. But if you've got this on paper, to go back and look and go, oh, wait, yeah, last time, but look what happened the next week. It's a great tool to remind you not to harp on the bad, but so you can see a pattern and go, not so much.
That's very courageous of you and inspiring that you actually had the courage to actually write a book. What was it that actually inspired you to share your story with everyone and write this book?
It was a combination of things, and one of them was we had started this series called Hope for Peace at the station. I like to pick different issues to support. Obviously, what we've done with breast cancer, and then to domestic violence for me was the next one in veterans. And I remember listening to these people talk, and they were so scared to talk with me. It took many meetings before an actual interview, and I remember feeling like a hypocrite, looking at them going, okay, I'm asking you to share that part of your life with me, and I need to be willing to do what I'm asking of you. And so that combined with the journal, I thought, you know, I'm not an overly smart woman, but I'm also not ignorant. I have a dual master's degree, and I had that when I was going through this, and I think that you feel stupid. You feel stupid and alone, and what the heck was I thinking? And I remember thinking, I wish I'd had someone else out there to say, yeah, honey, I've been there too, it's okay. And I was kind of hoping that's what this would serve as.
Sure, and you did, and you made it. You know, I read a very inspiring quote from your book. If you let yourself see your vision, you can and will do anything and achieve the impossible. That's just so powerful, those words. And you overcame this extraordinary challenge.
I feel like the book is, everybody's like, you did this, you did this, you did that. And I don't feel like I did anything. I feel like my family did. I mean, they circled the wagons, and they let me make the decisions, and they were supportive and didn't judge me and just loved me. And so I feel like it's more about them. And that's definitely a lesson I learned from them.
As an advocate and leader in our community, Neile, tell us, what message would you give to our viewers? What's the take-home message that you would want to share?
Just that if you, I've heard so many people say, oh, I don't know anybody that this is happening to. Oh, this doesn't affect anybody. This is happening with teenagers, and they're just not talking about it. It's happening in our schools, and we're just not talking about it. If we'll open our eyes a little bit to the subject matter, even though it's difficult, maybe we can start to take preventative steps rather than responses, and preventative would be so much better, because every time I meet someone, it's bittersweet when they say, oh, thank you so much, because you know they understand what you're talking about, and you wish they didn't.
Absolutely. Now, this is a great book, not only because you talk about your journey and your experiences and how you overcame it, but it's got great resources and a reference guide in the back.
I just felt like we wanted it to be a tool, and so went through and tried to list all of the coalitions against domestic violence and the shelters locally. We just cannot do enough for Peace at Home Family Shelter, the Northwest Arkansas Women's Shelter. I mean, you know, at Thanksgiving, they're full, and it's not just, it's kids. They need our support. We need to help them.
And one thing to remember, it's not just women who suffer. Men can also be a victim, whether it's physical, emotional, and mental. Well, I got my book from Barnes & Noble's. Where can our viewers get the book from? And is there a website for more information, Neile?
Yes, you can get it at Sam's, at Walmart.com, and then if you search my name, I now have a website and a blog, because life's been so crazy, and I'm sure you can agree with this, because you're a very busy woman. You have all these great experiences, and it's nice to share with people and then have them share back with you. It's been a great learning experience.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your testimony. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Family Health Today will be back in just a moment.